Assalamu alaikum friends. Welcome to lecture number 12 of SBL. This is the second lecture under your main section C of SBL, that is strategy. The first lecture was lecture number 11, which was concept of strategy. This is the second lecture, which is environmental issues. This lecture is the most important lecture in your SBL, okay, because you can expect your first requirement in SBL or second requirement in SBL based on this few topics that we are going to cover in this lecture. Okay, we are going to cover many models under this, so we carefully need to go through each one of this. There are so many models that we are going to cover in this lecture, which is going to be very useful for you in your exam to write your answers, because definitely you are going to get a question from this area. One of these models is going to be tested from you in your SBL exam, that's for sure. So let's start and see what we are going to focus today is ACCA guidance on how to use models. Okay, now you are being introduced to models. You need to know how to use those models in your SBL answer. Okay. Second, the pestle model. So the first model that we are going to cover in this lecture is the pestle model. Okay, pestle is for analyzing your external environment. I'm sure most of you know about this model from your previous studies, earlier studies like F1 and all. Pestle. P stands for political, E stands for economical, social, technological, ecological, and legal, right? Second, Porter's five forces model. Again, the five forces we are going to cover there to analyze the competition. Third, scenario planning, where we plan for the future, some scenarios. Porter's diamond, where there are four factors which determines how attractive an industry is, and environmental opportunities and threats. Okay, so today's topic is mostly on analyzing your environment where a business is operating, your external environment, forces that are beyond your control, how you're going to manage them. That's the main topic. That's the main theme. Everything sums up to that. For that, we have various models. Okay, so now before we start, this is just a summary of what we are going to cover in this video, in this lecture, and the upcoming lecture, the next lecture, lecture 13. Okay, because part of this is going to be covered in this lecture, the other part is going to be covered in the next lecture. So in this part, as you can see, strategic analysis is divided into two things. Okay, from your earlier lecture you know that we we have three levels: strategic analysis, then we choose the right strategy, and then we implement the strategy. So we are in the first stage, strategic analysis. Strategic analysis can be divided into two. All those things you don't have to know. It is divided into two. What it is just an overview of what you're going to cover in the lecture. Okay, so it is divided into two: environmental analysis and internal analysis. Environmental analysis, again, it is divided into three. If you can see on your left side, three boxes: pestle, five forces, diamond, which we are going to cover in this lecture. The other side, internal analysis. Internal analysis means inside your organization, something which you can control. Okay, that we are going to cover in the next lecture, not this lecture. Those are capabilities, value chain, and SWOT. But if you open your SBL textbook, the Kaplan textbook, okay, you will see both external analysis, sorry, environmental analysis, or you can say external analysis, and internal analysis are under the same lecture. They are in the same same chapter number 3 in your textbook, SBL textbook, in Kaplan textbook. I'm not talking about BBB. It is chapter number 3. Okay, both. But when I'm giving you the lecture, I'm giving it as a separate lecture, so that you don't get confused between external and internal analysis. Okay, internal analysis also has some models, external analysis also has some models, but they are separate. Let's just separate them. Okay, but when you're analyzing a company, you need all this. Okay, now it depends on how the question is asked from you. If the question asks what is how competitive is the industry, what do you think, what are you going to use? Can you use what? Can you use value chain for it? No, you're going to use five forces. Mostly, most prominent, most very specific and very near to it is five forces. If they say analyze your environment, which one? It could be pestle, it could be five forces. If they say the national competitiveness or how attractive an industry is, it is diamond, Porter's diamond. You can say diamond or Porter's diamond. So things like that. Yeah. So it it differs, right? But more or less they are linked. Okay, sometimes you have an option. Okay, in some scenarios, some requirements, you might be confused because they don't specify which model to use. By the way, in SBL they will not tell you, okay, use pestle, use five forces. No, you have to use your own judgment. Okay, which we are going to cover in the next select slide also. Some ACCA guidelines on how to use the models. Okay, before you know the models, you have to know how to use the model. Okay, that is the thing. So sometimes a requirement is analyze your environment. You can use pestle also, you can use five forces also. Okay, but how do you know which one to use? It depends on the information that you have been given. Sometimes if you're given information, like you have been given information, political factor also, legal factor also, technological factor also, better go by pestle. If you are given information like five forces, what are the five forces? Power of bargaining power of supplier, bargaining power of customer, threat of entrance, threat of substitute, intensity of competitive rivalry. If this information is given, better use five forces. Okay, there is no right and wrong answer in SBL, by the way. If you go by pestle also, it's okay. This is just a guide. This just helps you to write your answer. That's it. Okay. Now, ACCA guidance on models and framework. So ACCA says, okay, the ACCA examining team is saying about SBL exam that SBL is a very practical exam. This is not like your any other exam, P level exam I'm talking about. So don't compare SBL with your ATX. Don't compare SBL with your SBR. Don't compare SBL with your AFM. It's totally different. Other P level papers are they have certain technical areas which you need to cover. You get through it and you just apply it in the exam. That's it. SBL on the other hand is a very practical exam. Okay, you can expect things from wide areas, wide angles. Okay, anything could be asked, from performance management to audit to financial accounting to financial management. Anything could be asked in SBL. Okay, so they do not test individual. SBL will not test your individual theories or models. Okay, what is the pestle? What are the five forces? Includes. Okay, you are explaining each factor. It's not like that. You don't explain each factor in when you're using pestle. For example, you're using pestle to analyze the environment. You are not going to explain. Okay, political factor. Political means this. Ecological means this. Take no. Please avoid it. This I have included this in the beginning of the lecture because it's a warning. Okay, even though we tell students don't do it, students tend to do the same mistake over and over and over and over again. That's the biggest reason why students fail SBL exam, because they don't know how to use the model appropriately. It is not the individual knowledge of the model that is being asked from you. You will be given some scenario, some in the case study, some requirements. That is just a guideline for you to answer. That's it. Take it as just a guideline to help you answer, to help you set a structure for your answer. That's it. Okay. Second, understanding the technical theories is essential as provide a framework for students. Okay, we agree that it's a framework, then why to study the model? Because it gives you some technical areas that you need to cover. For example, if you don't know what is there in the political, okay, you know, okay, political factor, economical factor, social, it's a guideline. You are going to answer like that. But if you don't know what is there inside that political factor, what political factor includes, how are you going to answer that? From your case study also, how are you going to know that this is a political factor if you don't know how to differentiate this is a political factor, this is legal factor, this is technological factor? How do you, so you need some understanding of the model as well. You need to understand that, understand it, go through the model, but use it as a framework to help you answer. That's the best strategy for SBL students. Okay, third, you need to use your judgment. Okay, which model to use is purely judgment, your own judgment. Okay, and I would not say you are right or wrong. Sometimes you might use five forces over pestle, whereas in that scenario, pestle was more appropriate. Sometimes you might use it the other way around. There is no right and wrong. As long as you get your points correctly, whatever the model you use, you will get your points. Okay, you are not going. Your marks is not going to be reduced by using another model which might not be so appropriate for that current situation. No, it's not like that. Okay, but you have to use your judgment. They will not tell you. Examiner in the exam, SBL exam, they will not tell you use this model, use pestle model, use diamond, use what. No, you have to use your brain. You have to use your judgment. Which model is most appropriate under the scenario that I can use? Always think like that when you're writing SBL requirements. Which model can I use here? If you are short of model, you cannot remember any model, then in the before lecture I've told you there's always an alternative. What is it? What is it? SAF or SFA model. What is it? Suitability, feasibility, acceptability. Whether this strategy, whatever you are going to do, is it suitable? Is it feasible? Is it acceptable? If so, this model also you can use there in that where if you forgot the model, it happens many times. You forget the model, personal model, photos, five poses, diamond, things like that. Or if you don't even remember SFA or SAF, okay, suitability, acceptability, feasibility, or suitability, feasibility, anyway you can say it. If you forget that model also, you can just write whatever the bullet points from the case study. You can take it, write it in different use subheadings and use it in different points. You write it and write it. Structure your answer, okay, like full sentence, and then write it without a model. You can even write your answers without using a model also. You know that your marks is not going to be cut. You are going to get the same amount of marks only whether you use the model or not. But but be careful. If you're not using a model to answer, it becomes a little bit difficult because you are not a very trained person to write your answers in such a way from the case study, because we are always used to this thing. We always have a backup system or a support system to help you answer. We have this thing that there's a pro forma. We just fill there information from the case study. So if we don't have that pro forma, like how in financial accounting we know, okay, debit credit, things is given to you, this will go to debit, this will go to credit. So things like that in SBL also, if you don't have that model or theory, answering is not a problem, but it becomes a little difficult for you to think over, okay, how to write an answer, how to build up your answer, how to write it in this thing, because you will be there will not be a structure. Okay, so answers will be from here, answers will be from there, points will be from here. This, it will not be in a structure, it will not be in order. For example, if you are using they say analyze environment, it's a wider question, it's a very general question. How do you put it? How do you put your answer in a very specific thing? Pestle helps you in that. Why? Because Pestle says you can use subheadings like, okay, political factor, you talk about government, how they are setting tax and all. Economic factor, you talk about the expense. Social factor, you talk about unemployment, inflation, interest rate. Then comes technological, you talk about technology. Then comes your legal factor, you talk about laws and regulations and all. So this model, you see how it helped you to answer. You already came up with points from the government side, from the legal side, from the technological side. Whereas if you don't have this model, I'm not saying you cannot come up with this technological. Ultimately, you will come up with those same issue, but it becomes a little difficult to think over in a structured way, and also the time is limited. So using the model is always, it has always been proven to be helpful, and students have, whoever have used model, okay, the pass rate is higher than the ones who have not used a model and then answered. Okay, it is. I'm not discouraging you from not using a model, but it's always good, beneficial to use the model. Okay, so yeah. And always use a model which you think is very specific to the information that is given to you, where more information is given for a particular model. Sometimes you can see that information is given more on pestle factors, then use pestle. It's the safe side to use pestle rather than using other models. Other models also you can use, but safe side is always a link what model you are given more information on. Go by that model, choose that. That's the nearest, that is the safest also, because you have more points to write then from the case study, because you have, ultimately you have to use that piece of information, that case study, that integrated case study, 13-14 pages of case study. You have to use it in your answering the model. You just cannot use purely knowledge. Political factors, this economic, no definition is needed when you're using a model. Straight away go to the case study, pick up the points. These are political factor, favorable conditions, unfavorable conditions, keep explaining. Okay, that's how you need to answer. We are definitely going to show you a demo on how to use pestle. Okay, so the pestle model. Okay, now Petal model looks at the macro environment using the following headings. So when you're answering your SBL exam using Pestel, these are the headings you can use, subheadings I would say. Okay, political. What is political? We all know it is about government things and all. How government is working on taxation, their taxation policy, whether government is stable or not, their foreign trade regulations, all this comes under political. Economic is more on your interest rate, inflation, unemployment, income, all those things. Social, how your population demographics, your age wise, your social mobility, your income distribution, high, middle class, low class, your lifestyle changes. Okay, your attitudes to work and leisure, your level of education, things like this. Next, technological. Okay, how the technology environment is influenced by government. For example, government, whether they are spending on research, they are spending on new discoveries, they are giving incentives to invest in technology, right? Ecological. Ecological is more towards like environment. Okay, how you can produce goods and services with the minimum damage to the environment. And legal, the last factor, legal. Legal covers, see, legal and political can be combined, okay, because sometimes some things is hard. It might be difficult for you in the exam for you to categorize whether it's political or legal. Under that condition, okay, just put it under anything, it's okay. You're not going, your marks is not going to be reduced. Okay, your mark is not going to get affected at all, trust me. You can put it under, say, putting it under any heading is fine, okay. You can put it under legal or political, it will not affect so much because they're very similar. That, but that does not mean that environmental factor you will put under technological factor, or technological factor you will put under political factor. No, those are very different. But where this legal and political comes, they're very similar to each other. Okay, so that you can put in any, under any for heading and write answers. Okay, so that, and sometimes some answers, some SBL things does not require all the six factor. Sometimes it might not have the political factor, it might have the other factors, ecological, social, technology. Sometimes it might not have the technological factor, they might have the other factor. So do not sit there and struggle and break your head to find out that factor, or find information where it is not given to you. If things is not given, for example, nothing has been mentioned about legal, or nothing has been mentioned about technology, don't waste your time writing about technology. When it's not given, you don't write. When it's given in the case study, information is given to you, then only you write. So don't force your answers to put in that pestle model that it has to cover all the six letters. PESTEL. No. Sometimes you might only have to cover four letters, sometimes three, sometimes five, sometimes all the six. It depends, and also you have to see the marks also. Okay. We are definitely going to do a question on this, so do not worry. But most of the time, I'm not predicting anything. The trend of SBL is such that the first requirement in SBL itself is from this model. Pestle model you have to use. So be very careful and learn this, be very thorough with this model. Okay, you have a very high chance of using this model in your SBL exam. Then legal. Okay, legal environment covers influences such as taxation. Okay, there also government taxation, here also we have taxation. What is the employment law? What is the monopoly legislation? What is the environmental protection laws? All these are legal. Okay, and remember one thing, pestle model, all this factor is something which is beyond your control. Can you control the legal factor? No, it is not in your hand. Can you control the technology factor? No. Technology becomes out of date, is it your fault? No. So these are environmental external factor. You are just using the pestle model to analyze it, that's it, where your organization stands. Okay, so that's it. Now overall, at the end, remember, overall you have to give a conclusion. After using a model, overall conclusion you have to give. You might be sometimes asked to write a report also on this. How do you summarize it? You should be able to say whether it's favorable for the organization or unfavorable. Conditions are against, or it is for the organization, whatever the organization is given to in the case study. So overall, the model should allow a business to assess the growth prospects for the industry. You have to be able to tell whether this organization, this industry is growing, have reached the maturity stage, or is in the declining process. You should be able to tell this overall. Let's say out of the pestle, let's say out of six, there are six factors, right? Six Out of 6, let's say 4 factors are favorable, only 2 factors are against you. So that means more than 50% is favorable, means it's good, growth prospect is there. But if let's say only one factor is in your favor, the other 5 factors are against you, that means there is no growth prospect. The organization, the industry is not very attractive. Okay, so things like that. Now let us move on, illustrate this. Okay, so we'll illustrate by using this special model in a newspaper industry. Okay, same, all the 6 factors we'll go through, starting with P, political influence. Okay, what could be the political influence? Tax on newspapers. Okay, why? You might be shocked how tax on newspapers. See, many countries, they treat newspapers as a book. They same as a book, and they have no sales tax or VAT in their sales price. Okay, but if the government policy on the classification of the newspaper were to change, that means they change this. Currently they don't have tax because they are treating it as a book. Books does not have tax, no VAT, no sales tax, no VAT. But if the government have this policy that they want to change the classific how they have classified the newspaper from book to something else, what happens? That means a sales tax has to be charged now. Earlier it was not charged because books are free of sales tax. Okay, but now they'll be charging sales tax if they are not in the under the classification of books. So what happens? If the sales tax is put, what happens? Definitely your sales of newspaper will suffer, it will fall. Likely to fall. Okay. Second, so you can see if it changes against. Okay. Economic influences. Let's take exchange rate. Okay. Economic influence could see not you don't have to write all the economic influences. All the economic influences will not be applicable for you. Whatever it is, just write. Like here, what are the economic influences we covered? Exchange rate, interest rate, inflation, unemployment, disposable income. But we are just answering 1 or 2 economic influence. That's it. Or 3. Max is 3. More than 3, they will not ask you also. So here in this case, exchange rate is very suitable. Okay. How? Because most newspaper, they import their raw materials from outside. So wherever import export comes, exchange rate comes in the picture. Okay, most of them newspapers, they need materials, right, where the paper, the pulp and all comes from outside. So if the so when their domestic currency weakens, they will suffer because it will be more expensive for them to buy that paper and pulp now. Especially in recession, what happens? Okay, the second external influence is recession. So in a recession, okay, the buyers move down market. What is the meaning of down market? They will start spending less. They will go for the cheap alternative, like they will go for the cheap tabloids and all, rather than expensive newspapers. But opposite will happen when the economy recovers. When the economy recovers, they will go for the more expensive newspapers, right? So two economic influences has been answered here. Now the third factor, social influence. What could be the social influence? This is very easy to answer when it comes to a newspaper. Earlier, everyone used to have a newspaper. Time was there. They you have to nothing was online that time. Okay, people want more up to date information. Okay, now if you see the scenario today, it has completely changed. Why? Now if you see buyers, they have less patience. They cannot wait to get the information on their hand. They want up to date information. The moment they open the phone, they want the information. They want the news, what's there. But 20-30 years ago, this was not there. It was not possible. So now you can switch to alternative sources of information. You can go online to offline, offline to online, right? And social mobility has increased around the world. Okay. So now if you see languages, different languages have been introduced. Earlier newspaper was in one particular language. People were not able to read. People from the other language or other ethnicity group were not able to read the newspaper. Now same newspaper is in different languages, multi languages, right? So because of that, sales will increase. Sales of the newspaper has increased. Now you see newspapers are online now, right? Technological influences. Exactly. The thing which I was explaining. alternative sources of information. Now, earlier it was just the paper, newspaper. Now you can read the same information in your internet, in your mobile phone, in your television, wherever you open, you will get it. So what happens because of this? Because it's on technology, it's affecting the sales of the newspaper now, the paper form. Because now e-readers are becoming very popular. Everyone wants to read on their phone. No time to go through that big newspaper open. No. They see this quickly swipe through. Whatever they feel important, they take it. Whatever they feel it's not important, they just swipe through it. Okay. So e-readers. Because of this, this might present opportunity. So how can you see that there's an opportunity also, there's a downfall also by having this e-reader. Opportunity for the ones who are becoming online. They're giving newspapers around. But it's a downfall for the ones who are running the newspaper, the paper form. It will decline. Now, environmental factor. How environmental factor can influence a newspaper company? Carbon emission. You are using paper, you are using pulp to produce that newspaper, carbon emission. So, in short, newspaper is being harmful for the environment because they are using natural resources. High production volumes and large distribution networks are needed to produce newspaper. Okay, so newspaper that you read at home, don't think it's very you know it does not come very easy. For that newspaper to come to your home, it has to come through various sources. So many resources has been used, volumes are very high, large distribution networks are there, right? So what happens now? Buyers, they have become very sensitive towards environment nowadays, if you see. So they abandon newspapers because they want to support carbon neutral. They are going more carbon neutral. They want to reduce the carbon emission by switching to the modern technologies like through phone or laptop or TV. And then the legal influence. Limits on what can be published, right? If they put a limit that you cannot publish this things, it will affect your sales. Why? Because then you cannot differentiate newspapers. Okay, then if there's a limit, you cannot differentiate yourself from the other newspaper publisher. Everyone will be same, so it will affect your growth prospect. You cannot grow in that industry so much. So you see how. So this is exactly the same way in any organization that is given to in the exam, whatever the industry is. Okay, you have to use this way only, the political factor in that industry, whatever industry. This is a newspaper industry. Your industry could be anything. It could be a public sector, it could be a private sector, it could be a hospital, it could be anything. So now let us do a question test to understanding one, where we are going to carry a pestle analysis on a supermarket business. So let's carry out a pestle analysis on a supermarket business. Try to get at least two items under each heading. Okay. So let's start with political. Okay. You can write your answer in any order, but better to go by the order that is given to you. PESTEL. So let's start with the political factor first. Okay, political influence. So under political influence for a supermarket business, what can you write? They might have a policy on a large out of town sites. Okay, like competition policy to increase competition. Government can do that. So planning policy on large out of the town sites. They might tell to build a supermarket out of the town site, which increases competition. See, supermarket and all in the busy areas always there, right? But out of town sites, government want to plan to increase, expand supermarket in those areas to increase the competition. So that could be one political thing, factor. So planning policy. And by the way, your answer could be different from this, okay? This is just some suggested answer. If your answer is different from this, does not mean you're wrong. Make sure it is checked by someone, a mentor or a tutor, and get it right. Because if you are doing a self-study in SBL, it's very difficult for you to assess your own answer. to know whether you're right or wrong. Okay. Planning policy on large out of town sites. Competition policy, right? Next factor is economic. Okay, so economic, what could be there for the economic? For supermarket, unemployment. Now it's more because you can see everything is being digitalized. Okay, interest rate, these are common. Okay, and taxation. They told at least two items. Okay, at least two. So even if it's more than two, it's fine, but it should not be less than two. At least two means two and above. Okay, that is the meaning of at least, understand. But in the exam, obviously they will not say, okay, at least two items, three items. That's your judgment. Whatever the information that is given to you from the case study, you have to extract and pull from there. If it's three, write 3 points. If it's two, write 2 points. Okay. But make it very balanced when you're writing this factor, make it very balanced towards all the factor. It should not be that for political you're writing too much, whereas for the other factor you're just writing one line. It should not be like that. Make it very balanced. Okay. Social. Under social, what can you write? Changes in population sizes. This is purely your textbook knowledge. Okay, this is just for a revision, like whether you know, remember what is social factor, economic factor, and all. But in the exam, they will not ask you like this. In the exam, you have to use the case study only. Okay, because there is no case study. This is the only question in test your understanding one. If they have given you some background, you must have extracted information from there and wrote it in your answer. But since they just told write two items under each heading, so just it's your knowledge. That's it. So changes in population size is one. Okay, changes in consumer taste, like now people have become more health conscious, so they will go for the food items which are more health conscious versus the junk foods and all, right? Now technology, the internet, we all know, online ordering versus having shops, and also it will affect the shop, the stores and all, right? So internet, on internet ordering, on online ordering, or online shopping. Food packaging technology is there, that you don't need staff to package your food. There are technologies in place which will pack your food, and then we have some sophisticated just in time system right now, right? Those things. Environmental, for environmental you can even say it's ecological. Environmental or ecological, it's the same thing. Okay. Use of land for building. See, when you have supermarket means you need some land where you can have the supermarket, so use of land for building that supermarket. Okay, for building supermarket. Then we have animal welfare is there, packaging is there. For packaging also you are consuming ecological factor, right? And finally the legal, health and safety regulations are there. It's a food industry, it's a supermarket. In the supermarket we need health and this thing, safety regulations. Then we have consumer legislation. Okay, then we have things like food packaging regulations, inclusion of additives in food, things like that. So now let us go to our next model from pestle. Let us move on to the Porter's five forces. So let's start with the next model, that is Porter's five forces model. Here we are going to cover the five forces that have an impact on the attractiveness of the industry. Okay, so the first factor is buying power. What is the buyer power? Whether it's weak, whether it's strong. In any industry, you need to know whether your buyers are powerful or not, whether they have a power or they're less powerful. Okay, so what does it mean? On your right hand side, right column, you'll be seeing the meaning of it. Powerful buyers can demand discounted prices. Okay, having a powerful buyers means what? They can demand discounted prices and also some extra services. But this is good for the customer, but it's not bad for the bad for the organization, because it adds cost to the organization to give them discounted prices, to give the customer extra price services. It's a cost. Understanding? So one way it's good, the other party is suffering. Next is the supplier power. That's the next force. Okay, they say powerful supplier can demand higher prices for their product. If the suppliers are powerful, they can demand higher prices for their product when you are taking the supplier. Okay, for your raw materials and all, they will demand higher supplies from you. Competitive rivalry, the third factor, how competitive your industry is. Okay, so high levels of competition can lead to price war. When your market, your industry is highly competitive, so many competitors are there, what happens? Price wars are there, right? You will always go for the, you always go by the price tag, you always go by which supplier or which uh, company is giving you the lowest price. You go by that. So price wars are high, whereas in monopoly and all, you will not see high price wars and all. They don't compete by the price, they compete by other factor. And also high expenditure on marketing innovation. Remember, to bring competitor, okay, to snatch away competitor, okay, from your rivals, you have to expand more on your promotion, you have to spend more on your marketing, you have to keep on innovating. When you're highly competitive, to keep up with the competition, you have to innovate, and this are high expenses are there. You have to invest in your R&D, then you have to invest expand on marketing, right? So things like that. Now, new entrants. Okay, when a new entrants come, what happens? New entrants can increase the cost of resources as well as increasing the power of other forces. Okay, so whether there's a threat to new entrants or not, can new entrants enter easily to a market, or it's hard to enter a market? This also determines the attractiveness of the industry. Then substitute, power of substitute, whether there are lots of substitute or not. If the organization has a lot of substitutes, it means power of substitute is high, because customers can easily switch from one substitute to another. If the switching cost is low, okay, they will easily switch to the substitute. Okay, so that, what does it mean? How organization is suffering? If lots of substitutes are there, means you have to keep your price low, because if you do not keep your price low, customers can easily move on to the substitute. Okay, so how are you going to be tested? How this model is going to be tested in the exam? If information is given to you about the substitute, whether this industry has lots of substitute or not so much of substitute, entering an industry is easy, not easy, competitive level is high, low, supplier power is less, high, buyer power is high, low. So this things, if this information is given to you in the case study, means you have to use Porter's five forces. They will tell you, analyze the competitive competition of the industry or how attractive this industry is. When questions like this is asked in a requirement, that shows that you have to use Porter's five forces. Okay, and after this we have a test your understanding too, which I'm not doing because answer is not given. Okay, if you see out at the end of the textbook, no answer for question number test your understanding number 2. The test your understanding number 2, what is the test your understanding number 2? The question asked, consider the factors that might make each of these forces more powerful or weak. Each means what factors could make these five forces weak or strong. You have to know it. For example, let's start with the buying power. Sorry, buyer power. The power of buyer. Which factor can make it strong and high? strong and weak. If lots of, if the buyers are less, okay, but they have a power, they are very important, they have a high purchasing power, right? They buy most of the organization's revenues from that particular buyer. That means that buyer have a higher power to demand discounted price. That means that makes it a strong force. Buyers are very strong. If there are lots of buyers, they cannot demand for discounted prices in an industry. That makes it weak. Okay, that is just one factor. There could be other factors also which makes it weak. I'm just going through the answer briefly. Okay, I'm not writing it anywhere. I'm just telling you one by one. Supplier force. The more differentiated a supplier is, if they are giving it in a niche, okay, if the suppliers are providing for a niche market, they are very powerful, because you know they are not going to get the same supply anywhere else who is going to supply you the products that you need. If they are in the mass market, lots of suppliers are there which are undifferentiated. They give you the same services, same goods, they have less, the power is less. Competitive rivalry. When competition is high, it's high. When it's low, it's low. The power. Okay. The force. um, See, at the end of the at the end, you have to write whether the force is high or low. The power of the force is high or low. You have to write that. Okay. New entrants. When you can easily enter an industry, the new entrants. The force is high or low. The force is low. The force is high when they cannot enter easily. The power of the force. Substitute also is the same thing. Having lots of substitute, power is less. Having less substitute, power is high. Sorry, I think it's the other way around. Having lots of substitute makes it, yeah. So that's the thing. Now, let us move on to this in more detail, in great detail, each factor. Bargaining power of buyers. Okay, there is a combination of factor, I've told you, which makes the bargaining power high. Okay, the same factor you can use in your test understanding too also, because the question asks what makes it high or low. What are those factors? Number one, when a buyer is purchasing a high proportion of the supplier's total business. Supplier's total business, high percentage is from that particular buyer. Particular buyer is only purchasing from that. Let's say 50-60% of the proportion of that supplier's total business is from one particular buyer. That means that buyer is very powerful. That makes that buyer very powerful. He has a high bargaining power. He can demand for preferential treatment, for discounted prices, for other services. Okay, but if one particular buyer is not very significant, all the buyers are buying in the same proportion only, the power is low. Bargaining power is low. Second factor, a buyer makes a low profit. Wherever a buyer makes a low profit, bargaining power is high. How? Is a homework for you. You need to go and do it. Do a research on it. How? When a buyer makes a low profit, bargaining power is high. Third, the quality of purchase is unimportant. Delivery time is irrelevant and prices will be forced down. Okay. So these are the factors. If these three things are there, your bargaining power of buyer is high. Okay. There are similar alternative products available from other supplier. There buyers can demand, because customers see, because organization they want to keep the buyers. So if they say that okay, alternative product is there, we are going to move away from your product, you definitely want to keep that buyer. You definitely are going to listen to the buyer. So he has a high bargaining power. Okay. Next, bargaining power of supplier. Power of supplier to charge higher prices will be influenced by the following. Where they can charge higher prices. Number one, degree to which switching cost apply and substitutes are available. If there are lots of substitute, power of supply is less. They cannot demand high prices because they know if they charge high prices, customers will move on to their competitor. Switching cost is high means if the switching cost is high, that means it's very difficult to switch from one alternative to another, customers will stay. And in that, suppliers can demand also higher prices. Second, presence of one or two dominant suppliers controlling prices. If one or two dominant suppliers are there who control the prices, they can charge high prices. Third, the extent to which products offered have a uniqueness of brand. If your brand is unique, okay, which cannot be imitated elsewhere, which cannot be copied. If you have some technical performance or some design, one example is Apple. There is a reason why Apple is unique. No one copies its design, no one is able to touch the technical performance that Apple gives, the screen that Apple offers. So because of that, they charge premium prices. They're able to charge premium prices over the years. So that means the bargaining power of Apple, suppliers in Apple is very high. Third, competition. Whether there is an intensity means competition is very high. Intensity level is high or low. Depends on the following factor. Number one, number and the relative strength of competitors. What is the number of the competitors? Is it very high, very less? And even if it's high or less, what is the relative strength? Uh, how much strength does the competitor has? So the competition in a market can range from perfect competition through to monopoly. See, if you are a monopoly, you have a high power, remember that, to charge high prices. Because you are the only supplier there. People have to buy from you no matter what. Okay, perfect competition is where there's competition. So many competitors are there. Sometimes competitors, there are so many competitors, but their relative strength is not so much. They are weak. Sometimes competitors are less, but they are very powerful. Rate of growth. When the market is expanding, competition is low key. You cannot have competition and you can expand. When competition is very high, you cannot expand. When the market is expanding, means competition is at its lowest. Competition is not so much. Growth is high. Where fixed costs are involved, companies will cut prices to the marginal cost level to protect the volume and drive weaker competitors out of the market. See, wherever there are high cost, some industry have high fixed cost. To go to that industry, you need to incur high fixed cost. What happens? And you cannot charge that much price. As a beginner, when you are entering the market, you cannot. So what will you do? You will cut prices to the marginal cost only. Why? Because you do not want to suffer on the volume so that you can protect your volume. And what happens at the end? Whichever competitor is weak, they will be out of the market by this technique because they cannot keep up to that high fixed cost. They cannot charge their prices up to that high fixed cost. So ultimately, they will suffer because they are their initial stage. They need to survive, right? So if they cannot compete with the established industry, they will be out of the market. If buyers can switch easily between supply, the competition is keen. That's a feature, right? Buyers can easily switch means lots of competition is there, so competition is high. And the exit barrier. Exit barrier means the cost to exit the market now is high. That means you cannot easily just leave the market whenever you want. There is a cost to that. Some industry, yes, you can easily leave. The cost is low, but some cost is high. In that, companies will be hang on until forced out. They will keep on hanging there until they are forced out to leave. So because of that, what happens? Competition is high. It will increase the competition because you are also there. No matter whether you are suffering or not, but you are there still hanging on to be there in the market. So competition is high, and when competition is high, you cannot make profit. Profit will depress, will go down. Threat of new entrants. Major sources of barriers to entry. Okay. Number one, economies of scale. See, when an industry is established, okay, a new entrant cannot come and easily compete with them. Why? Because they have economies of scale. They have huge volume to cover their cost. Their cost is low. Okay. But when a new entrant comes, it will be very difficult for them to make it at that high volume at low cost. They cannot drive down the cost. So they cannot compare on cost because the established industries, they have economies of scale. So that's a barrier to entry for the new entrant. Second is product differentiation. Established industry, they already have their good brand image, customers trust their product, so they can easily compete on this, but new entrants, they cannot differentiate their product. It's not easy. Your product might be accepted by the customer or might not be. There's a risk. Always there's a risk. Third, capital requirements. When an industry requires heavy initial investment, whether in terms of staff, whether in terms of fixed, for example, steel industry, rail transport, you need heavy investment. It's not easy for the new entrant to do that, cope up with it. So you easily cannot enter that market. You see, switching cost, one-off cost in moving from one supply to another. It's a one-off cost means what? It happens once only. It's not a recurring cost. When you're moving from one supply to another, for example, a garage chain switching to car dealership, it's a one-off cost. But if the cost is very high, then for new entrants, they cannot maybe able to cover up this cost. So if this is there, it's a barrier. They cannot enter easily. You see, so these are 5 cost. Now, thread, yeah, we have some more under thread of new entrants. Access to distribution channel. If a new entrant comes, they will be restricted. They cannot have access to all the distribution channels. Some example, some major toiletry brand in UK, 90% of sales go through 12 buying points, like chemist multiples, major retailers. So because of that, what happens when a new entrant comes, it's difficult for them to get an access to those distribution channels. They cannot have that shelf space because it is already occupied by the major retailers and all. Second, cost advantage of existing producer. Existing producer will always have a cost advantage because they have economies of scale, they have their patent, they have special knowledge over the year, economies of learning, the learning curve they have favorable access to the supplier, the government is giving them subsidies, so they have all this advantage, everything they have. Know how, they know how. So it is much more difficult to penetrate a business where considerable know-how and skills are needed than to enter a simple basic market. Some market is very simple. You want to enter into a car industry, washing car or window cleaning. Do you need any high-level skill? Technical skill, not so much technical skill is required. Anyone can enter it and leave it also. But some industry know-how, you need special skills and you have to know it. Those industries it becomes very difficult to enter if you don't know the know-how and skills. Okay. Regulation. Governments or professional bodies might supervise and limit the new entrants. Sometimes governments only, or even the professional bodies. What do? They supervise and they will limit the new entrants. They can say, okay, in this industry, only this much supplier could be there. More than this, they will not let the new entrants to come there. So you cannot enter. Okay. Now, threat of substitute product. Okay. Substitute product. This thread is across all the industry. Whatever industry you are, substitute will be there, right? For example, rail versus bus or versus car. Okay. Or long life milk compared to delivered fresh milk. It could be across industry like a rail, bus, or within an industry. Within both are milk, but long milk or fresh milk. Across means rail or bus or car. So Porter explains the substitutes limits the potential. See, when you're having lots of substitute, you cannot make high returns. That's what Porter is saying. That means there's a ceiling on the price that you can charge when you're having lots of substitute. So the better the price performance alternative offered by substitute, the more readily will customers switch. The better price that you offer to the customer in a substitute market where lots of substitutes are there, easily customers will come to you, switch. So price competition is very high when substitutes is lots of substitute is there. Now let us illustrate this also. How we have illustrated pestle in a commercial property, builder of commercial property in this industry. So consider the attractiveness. See, in your SBL exam, actual exam also you will be asked questions like this only requirements. Consider the attractiveness of this industry, that industry. That time you have to know what model to use. Attractiveness, if they ask, use Porter's 5 forces. The word attractive. There will be some specific word that hints you which model to use. They might not tell you, okay, use Porter's 5 forces. Some word is there, hint is there. Okay. So this is for which industry? Builder of commercial property. Let us read competitive rivalry. In this builder of commercial property, what do you think? Competition is high or less? Definitely it's high. because there are tens and hundreds of rival firms are there in this. Who is not making a property now? You tell me, commercial property. See, there's a difference. Residential properties, you're building homes and all and giving it for the rent. Commercial properties, offices, office space, and all those things. Okay, thousands and hundreds of people are there doing it. So competition is very high. But within this, larger firms have some advantages. What are those advantages? Number one, greater bargaining power. The larger firms, not the small firms. The larger firms in this industry, they have a bargaining power, greater bargaining power. Why? Because they can say which development size they want to purchase. There they have a great bargaining power. Second, dealing with major customer. They can deal with major customers. Larger firms, major customer. Third, economies of scale. See, larger firms always have the advantage of economies of scale by using prefabrication building techniques and all. Pursuing planning application. Better able to offset risk. Larger firms, right? They can do various things to offset their risk. Whereas new firms, okay, they will not have so much of ways to offset their risk. Then number six, they can use sophisticated techniques. The bigger firms like critical path analysis for larger developments. What is critical path analysis? We are going to cover this also later on. Later on, maybe towards the end. Not in this lecture. In your SBL syllabus, it comes towards in the middle or in the end of the syllabus. But it will come. We are going to cover this. Critical path analysis. What is it? Every activity has some time taken, some route to finish from one activity to another. So critical path analysis shows you the smallest, the shortcut, the smallest time taken, the shortest time taken to finish a task. Okay. 7. Advantages. More able to offer part exchange deals to house buyers. They can partly exchange deals. Then, however, this must not be taken to extremes. Disadvantages are there. What is it like? The individuality of each construction project limits economies of skills. Yes, true. You are there in the commercial property. You're building commercial buildings, but every construction has some individuality to it. Not all the building of projects are same. So because of that, your economies of scale is limited. You cannot achieve that much economies of scale also. Especially in respect to materials, when you want materials, because each material will be different from building to building. Second, difficult for firms to differentiate their product. You cannot differentiate. Can you differentiate in commercial building property? Everyone is same. Everyone is giving you the commercial building only. Basically, make what the architect has designed. Basically, what architect has designed only they're designing. There's no difference. Even small firms can benefit from learning effect. Yes, small firms over the years, they know ways, they learn, and they have that learning effect curve. It's not always a big firm. Overall, same how we have seen for the pestle. Overall, you have to give one conclusion. So overall, this is likely to be highly competitive market where price wars and industry consolidation are common. So what does it say? That in this industry, price wars are high because it's highly competitive. Everyone is deciding based on the price. And industry consolidation are common. It's easy because industry is it's not differentiated. It's what do I say? It's common. It's very similar from one building to another. Now, threat of entry. Threat of entry in this industry is high or low? The entry to barrier is low or high? There are low barriers to entry. What does it mean? Low barrier to entry when you can easily enter or it's difficult to enter? Easy to enter. Low barrier means it's easy to enter that industry. Why? Because capital requirements are less there. Okay. Whenever you want equipment, you can hire them. And also regarding the skills that an individual needs, the labor needs is less. Okay. And in that industry, you easily get high labors are very available. They're skilled and you can easily get high level of skill. I mean the labor you can easily get. Availability of labor is there. It's high in this industry. But working capital may be seen as an issue. Why? When you're building something, it's not easy to manage your working capital. It might be negative sometimes. Your liabilities might be more than assets. Why? Because you're not getting the payment until you complete the whole building. And so that you have to wait. So in initial days, you are going to suffer from working capital by having a negative working capital. But This issue also can be solved by having a progress payment. What is progress payment? As long as you progress, let's say you have made 30% of the building or 20% of the building is complete, you receive the payment rather than waiting to get one final payment at the end. You receive payment in installments by the progress that you have made. So this barrier can be reduced. There are also likely to be of a few legal barriers as to no formal qualifications are needed. Legal barriers are less because formal qualifications are not needed for this industry. Anyone can enter. And also, therefore important to build a brand and a reputation. You need to build a brand and a reputation. That means it becomes more difficult to enter based on brand and reputation. You have to have a reputation for that. For example, you'll be selected based on the reliability that you give, the quality of the service that you give, your workmanship, your efficiency. Why? So that buyers will choose you over the rival. If you are reliable, if you are a quality, they will always choose you over the rival because there's a big competition is there in this industry. So you have to have quality, you have to be reliable to keep up with the competition. Then, thread of substitute. What is the main thread of substitute in this industry? Second-hand property. Second-hand property is the main thread. Okay, and second-hand property is available for rent or purchase. You can rent it, you can purchase it. And there are a lot of property which is available at high prices in some parts of the country. Okay, but make new property more attractive. High prices in some parts of the country might make new property more attractive because it's easy for you to make more profit then if you're having high prices in some parts of the country. But this also can be offset by higher land prices in such areas. Yes, it's true that property industry is attractive because you can charge high prices. But on the other hand, it's not so good because even your land prices also is going to be higher than in that condition. But as governments continue to invest in regeneration initiatives, there should still be a demand for new buildings. Sometimes government invest in this new regeneration initiative. So because of that, still there will be demand for new buildings, even if it's expensive and costly to make it. And next, this factor is likely to be closely linked to the pestle model, for example. How? The threat will be highest when the economy is in decline, but it will be low when the demand for housing is increasing. You have this threat, okay? When the economy is in decline, no one will want to go for the higher prices, higher land and all. They will go for the lower things only, old buildings. But when the economy is recovering or when the demand for housing is increasing, this thread is low. Substitute of thread is low. So economy improving or declining is a pestle model, is a factor from the pestle, economic factor. But the thread of substitute is a political, sorry, it's a factor from the Porter's five forces. So you see how these two are linked. Okay, in the exam you will not be told to link, but I'm just explaining you that there's a link. Okay, now power of supplier in this industry is less or power of supply is more or less less. There are likely to be numerous supplies of materials. Selling an undifferentiated product, you are selling an undifferentiated product. Whatever this one is building, that one is also building the same thing. There's no differentiation. So they have low power. If differentiation is less means undifferentiated product, you are giving the same product to the mass audience. Suppliers have low power. That means they have low power. Large builders have high power, so they will be able to demand bulk discount and also achieve the cost control. Buyer is going to get benefited by this. They will be able to demand bulk discount also because you are giving an undifferentiated product. You are not a differentiated unique product, so you can demand bulk discount also and achieve the cost control also. Easily you can control your cost. Power of customer. See, commercial buyers, they will have low switching cost. What is the meaning of low switching cost? Easily they can switch from here to here, from supplier to supplier. Easy, very easy. Because product is undifferentiated. You think, for example, let's say undifferentiated product, let's say tissue paper. Okay, tissue. Will you think so much? Switching cost is very easy. Whether you purchase this tissue paper or that tissue paper. It's very easy. Switching cost is low. It's undifferentiated. So you can easily switch from here to here. And the buyers may themselves be experiencing low profitability. You will be having low profits because you cannot retain your customer for too long. Switching cost is low. That means customers have a high power. So this is likely to make them powerful. Whom? Customer is powerful. Customers know product is undifferentiated. Customers know that their uh, switching cost is low. They have always the power to go to the rival. So they have a power. That's why they can demand for lower prices. Customers can demand for lower prices in this condition and overall. So what is the overall opinion for this industry? It would appear that the margins in this industry are likely to be low. What is the see? Whenever you give overall opinion, always talk about margin. Start with the margin. What is the margin of that industry? Because what is the question about attractiveness of an industry? So attractiveness means you have to talk about the profit of the industry. Profit means margin only. Margin is high or low. So in this industry, margin is low or high. Think customer can demand high prices. Sorry, low prices. Supplier does not have high demand. They have to listen to the customer. Competition is high. Substitute is high. It shows margin is low. Margin is low. So margin in this industry is likely to be low. Why? Competition is high. Buyers have lots of power. Substitute is high. Commercial builders have to rely on high volume of work. Okay, if you have to make a profit, you have to make high volume of work. Otherwise, it's not possible for you to achieve profit. And we'll need to establish a reputation also. You have to establish a reputation also as a reliable builder, the one who gives quality. That ensures that buyers choose them over rivals. So this makes for you, this drives down your margin. It's hard for you to come up with high margin in this industry. Now let us do test your understanding 3 before we move on to the next model. Test your understanding 3. Apply a 5 process analysis to a company that does garden maintenance for household, cutting grass, removing weeds, and pruning shrubs. Okay, so let us apply the 5 forces. Thread of entry. Okay, so when you say thread of entry, okay, when you give each forces next to it, you have to write whether it's high or low. Okay, that's how you apply 5 forces analysis. So you tell me thread of entry is high or low. It's high. Why? Threat of entrance is high because in this industry, okay, only modest amount of capital and know-how are needed. Okay, you need to know how to do it. Okay, so modest amount of capital you need. Okay, and know-how, as we have discussed before, that if an industry needs it, know-how. Okay, there are know-how techniques that you need to know to enter that industry. That makes the threat of entry high. Okay, so know-how are needed. This makes it difficult to enter this industry. Threat of entry has high means difficult to industry. Okay, and no regulations. Do you have regulations in the industry? Garden maintenance, no regulations. It's hard to differentiate. Okay, and limited scope for economies of scale. Limited scope means there could be some economies of scale, but it's not so much. Okay, limited scopes of scale. Limited scope for economies of scale. Thread of substitute. High or low? It's low. Why? Except for householders who opt for a very low maintenance garden. If you are opting For a very low maintenance garden, yes, you can have substitute there, lots of substitute, but here it is low. Why? As for customers who choose to look after their own gardens. Customers who choose to look after their own gardens and the ones who prefer low maintenance, for them it's high. Otherwise, threat of substitute is low. That means there are not so much of substitute here in this industry. Okay. Bargaining power of customer. It's high or low. Bargaining power of customer is low in this. They cannot have much say over it. Why? Because there will be many small customers in this industry. Okay, I'm not writing it down, but make sure that you write it down, or you can even read the answers later on. But it's low because there are many low customers. Okay, so individual bargaining power is low. See, whenever there are many small customers, now they individually they cannot bargain so much. It's low. Power is low. So quality is perhaps not a vital component of the service. Quality is not so important in this. Okay, whatever the quality you give, it's fine. So if quality is not so important, bargaining power of a customer is also less. When quality where quality is very important, bargaining power of customer also will be high. Remember that. Now coming to the bargaining power of supplier. Slow or high? Slow. Slow. Why? Supplies needed are widely available. When supplies are widely available, their bargaining power is less. They cannot demand so much. You can easily replace from supply to supply, you can switch. And finally the competition. Competition is high because business is very easy to get into. When a business is very easy to get into, competition is high, and there are negligible switching cost. Switching cost is very negligible. Easily you can switch from this competitor to that competitor. Okay. And one more thing that you need to remember, okay, that as the forces become more powerful, all these five forces, they become more powerful. Okay, the industry becomes less attractive. Less attractive. I'm writing it here. Remember this always. Forces becomes more powerful is the opposite reaction. The forces in the industry is okay. Industry becomes less attractive. And opposite is the true. When forces become less powerful, industry becomes more attractive because you can make higher margins over there. Okay. So because of this, what happens? Industry becomes less attractive means everything is with the profit. Profit means margin. So margin goes down. I'm just showing by an arrow. That means margin is likely to decline in that industry. Less attractive means that only. And if the forces are weak or absent, sometimes it's absent, that force might not be applicable for that industry, then industry is said to be attractive. You should know this. Okay, this is how you conclude finally whether an industry is attractive or not. So now let us go to our third model, which is scenario planning. Scenario planning. Okay, so after Pestle and Porter's five forces, let us go to the scenario planning. In scenario planning, what do we do? Okay, so Pestle and the Porter's five forces, they focus on the most likely future market state. What is most likely to happen in the future? That's what Pestle and five forces has been doing. Okay, now scenario planning is, why do we use scenario planning? So that we can force the managers to think, okay, there are other potential future market positions also, other than most likely scenario that we have gone through the Pestle and the Porter's five forces, right? So in a scenario planning, okay, the key environmental factors are identified. We identify what are the key environmental factors and the firm, and then consider how this might change in the future. We see, go through some factor and how this can change in the future. If this changes in the future, what is the impact today? That's what we do in the scenario planning. We set up some scenario. Okay, we say, okay, this is, if this happens, what should be done? If this happens, what are the contingency plan, right? So plans are then considered for each of this. Now, let us go to the number of scenarios that one can plan for. Okay, and this is not only in SBL, even in your practical world, in your real world, this can help you a lot. Okay, Excel does it for you. Okay, what if? Okay, there's a thing, formula known as what if. You put there, change the variable, and see what is the impact. So there are three scenarios that one can plan for. Number one, the most likely scenario, okay, which we have covered in Pestel and Porter's five forces also. Basically, this is your expectation. Majority of the managers expect this only, that this is likely to be the scenario. Okay, most likely scenario. Second is best case scenario, where you predict that this is the best. Okay, all the factors will go in your favor, the environmental factors. Okay, like product will become fashionable, economy will improve, competitors will fail to react to your changing technology. Things like you are very optimistic about the future. Next is you are very pessimistic about the future. Worst case scenario. You think everything will go turn against your expectations. Market will go to recession, product will go out of technology, technology will become obsolete, things like that. So now, what are some benefits and the drawbacks of scenario planning? Let us go to the benefits first. Number one is it makes the managers aware that what are the key environmental factors. Second, it gives a warning sign rather than things actually uh, getting affected and then you react. You become proactive, and before the situation becomes worse, you keep things in place so that you can deal with it if things occur like that. Like keep contingency plan. So it's like a warning sign. Third, as I told you before, it helps the managers to create contingency plan, that how you're going to cope up with the different scenarios. And you have to be very flexible with the change. When you're adapting, you have to be very flexible. You cannot be reject. Okay, this is the scenario I have planned, so this only will happen. No, it might turn against what you have predicted for your what you have planned for. That time you have to be flexible enough to adapt. Large advantages, the strategic competitive advantage in the long term that you're going to get through this planning, especially when an environment is a fast moving. This planning helps a lot there, because every time you have to keep changing, every time you have to keep adapting. Okay, what are the problems are any planning is expensive and time consuming. You have to give your time to it, and it's expensive to carry out this planning. You need variables, you need lots of information that is likely to happen in the future, for which you uh, basically you're using a judgment only. That's it, and it's very risky for that, because it can go wrong. Also, it can go in any direction. Also, you have to take care, okay, that when you're using scenario, you're planning, okay, avoid thinking of the scenario as focus. This is not showing you your future focus, that this will be your future. It's just a planning tool. Third, they should not be seen as a replacement for budgeting and control system. Just because you say, okay, we are planning for the scenario, the worst case scenario, we don't have to budget, we don't have to control. No, it's not the replacement. And the aim is to force management to consider and prepare for different scenarios. You don't set this target scenario as a target, that this is the target we are going to achieve. No, nothing like that. It's just you prepare them, okay, under worst case scenario, best case scenario, and the most likely case scenario. Okay, because if you set the target as a set the scenario as a target, that this is only you want to achieve. For example, you have set a scenario that profit is likely to increase by 10%, and that is your target. If you have achieved 8%, managers will become demotivated. It's likely to affect the managers. They cannot achieve it. So don't set the scenario as a target. You're not achieving that. Your goal is not to achieve that scenario. You are just predicting. You are just planning. Okay. Porter's diamond. Now let us go to the fourth model. That is Porter's diamond. Actually, third model, because scenario planning is not a model. Okay. But Porter's diamond. Now, Porter tried to answer the following questions. Before we go to the model, let's see what is this following common questions that anyone can answer. Why does a nation become the home base for successful international competitors in an industry? Why do you think some nations are always favored and some people always prefer that nation only? for international businesses, and whether they want to do business, they do in that country. Why is it so? Examples are there. We have plenty of examples like Germany. Germany is known for their car manufacture. Japan is in the consumer electronics. Why is it so? Because they have some advantage over the others for that particular industry in that country. We are talking about nation wise. We'll go in depth in the model in the next slide. But first, let's see. Second, why firms are based in a particular nation able to create and sustain that competitive advantage against the world's best competitors in a particular field. Some firm in some particular nation have some particular advantage. Because of that, they can create that sustain that competitive advantage over the others. Why is it so? And the third question is, why is one country often the home of so many of an industry's world leaders? Like India, if you say, for example, it is the home for many call center. Why is it so? If you say in terms of clothes, garment, you can take Bangladesh is one of it. Low cost producer. You will get the low cost stuff. The wages are very cheap there. So why? This questions that you have, these three questions, why? It's closely related to the Porter's diamond only. Just see this diagram. This is the Porter's diamond. And you can see why it is called Porter's diamond, because if you see the shape, it's like a diamond. Four things are there, four elements are there, which makes a diamond. Shape and all does not matter so much, but just understand that it's like a diamond. Four factors are there, four conditions are there, which makes it a Porter's diamond. Don't get confused between Porter's five forces and Porter's diamond. Porter's five forces have five forces, and Porter's diamond is like a diamond. Porter's diamond has four factors. Okay, so let us go through one by one. First, factor condition, or let's say, okay, demand condition. Some industry has a demand. Some nation has a demand for particular thing. Demand condition. Then we have factor conditions. Factor could be so many things. Maybe they have the resources. Maybe they have natural resources in that country. Maybe they have the staff who are skilled in that country. It could be anything. Then we have related and supporting industry. One industry is not successful on their own. Every industry has some related, some supporting industry, which makes that industry a successful industry. Then we have firm strategy, structure, and rivalry. Okay. So now let us go in depth in these four elements, starting with the demand condition. Okay. See, there's a strong home market demand for the product or service. Maybe the demand is very high for particular product or a service in a particular home market. They have that thing. For example, uh, Brazil, they're in the coffee, right? Brazil has this coffee thing and all. It has a huge demand for it. South Africa has for gold and all, right? So this determines how industry perceives and respond to buyer needs and creates a pressure to innovate. Okay. Demand condition will tell the industry how they have to react to the buyer's need. They know what buyers want. Because of this, it adds a pressure to them that they have to innovate. They have to innovate. If you are a compliant domestic market only, it's a disadvantage. Why? Because you are not forcing the industry to become innovative and able to excel. You're not excelling anywhere. You're not telling them to become competitive. Second, factor condition. Factor this all five factors. Factors could be anything. It could be either your physical resource, maybe the land, maybe you have an appropriate kind of land in that country, maybe it's the weather that is more suitable, maybe some minerals are there, the capital that they have, the human resource that they have, they're skilled, they have the right level of motivation, the price is reasonable, or knowledge that they have in a particular industry, right? Or infrastructure is supporting. So these are some factor conditions, favorable factor conditions. Then we have third factor, which is relating and supporting industry. Success of any industry is due to its suppliers and related industry. Okay. One example is Sweden. Let's take Sweden. See, Sweden's global superiority in its pulp and paper industry. So it is very superior in its pulp and paper industry. Why is it? Why is it so superior? Because it is supported by a network of related industry. It has expertise in packaging. It has those industry that is into packaging, that is into chemical, that is into wood processing, that is into conveyor system, that is into truck manufacture. All these are there in place in that country itself. Because to come up with a paper industry, you need the support of all this industry. You have to go through all this industry. You alone cannot be successful in industry. You need the support of industry packaging. You need chemical industry. You need wood processing. So it's there in Sweden already. So many of the supporting industry have also achieved leading global. Even the supporting industry have achieved a global positions in the world. So for example, Sweden must be having the wood best chemical industry or best wood processing industry, things like that. Now, firm, strategy, structure, and rivalry. Organization goal can be achieved by the ownership structure. Okay, like unquoted companies, they have longer time horizon to operate. Why? Because their financial performance is not so much under scrutiny. They're less subject to public eye, less subject to less scrutiny than the quoted companies. Even their return on capital requirements will be different. Okay, so all this four makes an industry attractive or not. Whether you want to invest in that industry, whether you want to go international, when you go international, you select the country based on this four factor. Okay, now let us illustrate this Porter's diamond through an example. Let's take Starbucks. Okay, Starbucks is the largest American cafe chain. We all know it has been successful. It has been expanding into many overseas countries like Canada, Japan, and UK. Okay, why is it so successful? Why it is expanding so much in overseas, and why it is so much accepted also overseas? There are some reasons to it. Number one, factor condition. Let us see the factor condition. What are the factor conditions? Factor conditions are that Starbucks are able to offer better looking premises. If you see the premises, you would want to go and have a chit chat with a friend or do your assignments or things like that. Rather, see, when people go to Starbucks, they just don't go for the experience of coffee or having a coffee. Okay, it gives an experience. It's like a home-like experience. You meet with your friends there. You have your meetings there. You do your assignments there. So it gives you better looking premises. It's a factor condition. Resources, okay, which makes it very attractive to the customer. Okay, rather than just coffee shop and having coffee, you meet and mix with people. And it is established also in those countries like Canada, Japan, and all. Coming to the demand conditions, Starbucks has developed in a US market share where customers were very demanding. They have been demanding a lot of things. What is it? They wanted a bespoke. Bespoke means one to one. You are giving them a personal experience. Okay, people in US, they started demanding, they want personal experience. No one wants experience which is like, they want personal experience one to one. Okay, so Starbucks, they understood this need at the very beginning, and they started developing their system so that they can cope up with this flexibility, they can cope up with that bespoke experience that customers were demanding. How? By allowing customers to choose which bean to use. Now you can choose also which bean to use. You go to any Starbucks cafe and they will ask you which bean you want to use. They will ask you milk or cream. They will even ask you the size of the cup, large, medium, small. So this allows that the company is having the ownership. They are having a say over what they want. Okay. So company has easily adapted to this new taste and culture in those overseas market. That's why they are so successful there. Now, coming to the third, structure and rivalry. Okay, what is the structure and rivalry? Existing suppliers in these new countries were often very small. See, suppliers in these new countries like Canada and Japan, existing, they were very small. They were undifferentiated, they were local. So when Starbucks came, they were able to offer a branded experience with economies of scale which kept the cost down. Okay, so the skills it developed in achieving huge success in its domestic market were exploited in full to this. Whatever the skills that they have acquired in achieving the success in the domestic market, the same they have replicated in the overseas market. That's what they have done. So their cost is down. They have got the economies of scale by giving them a branded experience also in those countries. That was their structure, basically. Okay, so now let us do test your understanding 4, where we are going to apply this Porter's diamond to the US personal computer industry, PC industry. Test your understanding for. Apply the Porter's diamond to the US personal computer industry. Okay, so when you're applying the Porter's diamond, basically you are talking about the four conditions. First is factor conditions. Okay, so in a factor conditions, what is there when it comes to US personal computer? What is that factor which is helping it to, which is helping, like the US is so known for the personal computer industry, PC industry. There is an area also where all the IT engineers come from. They get trained. What is that area? Silicon Valley. It is known as Silicon Valley because they are very trained in that, right? That area is very, so because they have a large population of a well-trained engineers. That's their reason for their success. Okay. Uh, Large population. If you see their population in US, everyone is a well-trained engineers there. Okay. That population is made up of well-trained engineers. So that's their factor condition in US. That's why US is well known for IT. Anything related to technology and all, research and all comes from US because large population of them are well trained engineers. Okay, demand condition. What could be the demand conditions? Large population of individuals and the businesses who needs a one PS. They want PS. Large population of them they demand PC. They want or demand PC, personal computer. So that helps them to build this, go into that PC industry because there's a demand for that. And related, the hardest thing is this: related and supporting industry, to know who are your supporting industry. The other two conditions are quite easy, you can get it from the information given to you, but finding out this is a little bit tricky. Okay, see, computer, when you're in the PC industry, you are taking help of many other small industry like component manufacture. Okay, large and well endowed universities. You need universities who are training engineers. Once they get the qualification, bachelor degree or master degree in engineer, you hire them. Okay, so you need to contact with the universities as well. Are there any engineers and all? So you are taking, they are related, they are supporting industry. So many component manufacturers, many component manufacturers close by. They all are close by, so it's easy. They're not far away that you have to hire, invest so much to bring them into one location. They are close by in one location only. Okay, large and well down universities are nearby. Even the universities are there nearby. So large university and well endowed universities are close by. So it's easy to have access to people in the university. It's easy to have access to the component manufacturer because everything is close by. And finally, the firm strategy. Rest all you can fill in the blanks. Okay, structure and rivalry. Okay, so what is the firm structure in that company, in that country? Sorry, an entrepreneurial economy. They allow many startups. It's their structure. They have this thing. Their strategy is only like that. They allow many startups to grow. Okay, and the best survive the intense rivalry. Okay, this is the old industry where there are many startups and they have survived. They have survived the intense rivalry. There are so much of rivalry in that industry, but they have survived it. Because what happens in the startups, many startups, 70% of the startups fail in the first 3 years. Okay, we know the reasons why they fail and all. But this is one industry where they have survived the intense rivalry because of their structure. They have that structure inbuilt in them, foundation laid down. They have an entrepreneurial economy. Entrepreneurial means you are willing to take risk. You are letting more and more ideas come. You are acting on it. You are being innovative. So, an entrepreneurial economy. allowed many startups. Okay, only an entrepreneurial economy only will allow startups. Okay, if you are not willing to take risk, you will not allow many startups. And best, survive the intense rivalry. It's not easy to survive the intense rivalry. So you see their structure, the industry that they have supported close by, and their demand that people have, and the factor condition that their population is a well-trained engineer. All this factor is helping them to be an attractive country for PS industry in US. They're talking about from the point of US. Okay. So now let us go to our last part in this lecture, that is environmental opportunities and threats. Environmental opportunities and threat is the last section of this lecture. Okay, we are going to cover strengths and weaknesses because they are internal. See, strengths and weaknesses is something that an organization can work on. They have the strength, they build, they keep up with the strength. Weaknesses, they try to overcome that weakness. But opportunities and threat is something which is externally. It comes externally. Opportunities, you sometimes have to wait for the opportunity. Sometimes you might miss out the opportunity. It is something which you get or you do not get, but it is outside your control. Threats is also the same thing. Okay, so let us go through this environmental opportunities and threat. So far in this chapter, what we have done, we have looked at number of tools, or you can say models, tools, models, everything is the same, that can be used to help make sense of the environment. Okay, you were analyzing the environment by using all these models. Now what you are doing, after you have analyzed environmental opportunities and threat, is now you are going through the result. It's like a result of those analysis. Okay, that is this giving an opportunity or is this giving a threat. So the result of this analysis can be classified as either an opportunity or a threat. Whatever you have done in pestle political factor, you will know whether it's giving an opportunity or a threat. Whatever you have done in Porter's five forces, the bargaining power of supplier or threat, is giving an opportunity or a threat to in that industry. Whatever you have done in Porter's diamond, factor condition, demand condition, is it giving an opportunity or is it a threat? What you have done in scenario planning, that you have planned for the future, is it giving an opportunity or a threat? So all these things end up to one thing only, whether it is an opportunity or a threat. Okay, now let us go through this opportunities and threat example to understand this better. Okay, so an opportunity like internet, for example, streaming program, as viewers want to watch them. When it's an internet, how an opportunity could be there in the internet? Because you can go live video, you can do live streaming. Okay, because streaming program is something that viewers want to watch, through which you can earn also. Test your understanding 5. Perform an opportunities and threat analysis on this two industry. One is passenger train service, the other one is nuclear power station. Basically, you have to list the opportunities and some of the threats. So let us start with the passenger train service. Okay. Let us list some of the threats, or you can even start with opportunities. It does not matter, but let us list something. Okay. Mm, Number 1. What could be a threat in a passenger train service? Terrorism. Okay. Number 2. Competing services. There are so many passenger train services now, right? So how do you differentiate? There are competing services. Number 3. Underinvestment in the network infrastructure. When you're not doing investment in the network infrastructure, underinvestments is a threat. Then we have see some countries, they have increased influence. Okay, that means they are using less use of train so that people can acquire cars. They are using more of cars than the train. Okay, so it's a threat to the train industry. Some countries prefer using cars over train, especially if they have a good road service and things like that, right? Cars are also less expensive. They will go by cars over train. And finally, the fifth thread that could occur: losing the franchise or right to operate the service. It can happen. Sometimes you might lose the service, or the franchise. Okay, if the service is provided by a private company. Okay, if you are a private company providing the service, you might lose that franchise or the right to operate the service. So that could be our thread. Okay, especially if you are a public private company who is giving the service. Now let us go to the opportunities. Opportunities are plenty. Okay, in this industry, what could be some opportunities? Environmental concerns and regulations. What does it mean? They might go by their train because they don't want to pollute by using cars or other alternative mode of transport. Because cars and all, we know it causes pollution, traffic congestion is there. So in that case, train service can give you that opportunity. Okay, so environmental concerns and regulation. Maybe there's a tax on a car. Carbon emission tax is there. So train service and all, you don't have to. So environmental concerns and regulation. Number two, building customer loyalty. Maybe you can have a scheme which is similar to the air miles. Okay, so this could be an opportunity for you in this industry. Opportunity means something which is not currently happening, but which in the future you can apply, right? So building customer loyalty, you can build customer loyalty through the service. Example, scheme similar to air miles. Or increasing cost of petrol, making cars more expensive to run. You can increase the cost of petrol. So when the cost of the petrol goes up, cars become expensive to run, and you will go by the alternate mode, that is train. Okay, so increasing cost of petrol, making cars expensive to run. Fourth, innovative fares for different market segments. For different market segments, you can have this innovative fare. Okay, then new routes which are expensive to develop. Sometimes it's difficult for when you're using car because you have to build different routes and it's expensive also. But when you're going by the train service and all, it has the rails and you go by the rails, right? There, it's there. You don't have to keep on building rails. Okay. So, but once established might be a barrier to entry of competitors. Okay. New expensive to develop. Correct. But once they are built, okay, for the train, once the new routes are, it's expensive to build one. Once you have built it, it becomes expensive for the new entrants to come and compete. It's a barrier of entry for the competitors. They cannot easily come and build new routes when they want to come in the rail service. Okay. So new routes which are expensive to build. or expensive to develop. But once they're done, it's a barrier of entry for the competitors. Okay, fill in the blanks. And fifth one is a new technology. You can write the points. I'm just explaining you the points. Okay, how new technology? Magnetic levitation is there. Generally reduced journey times are there. This are through reduced new technology. Now let us go to the next, that is nuclear power station. In the nuclear power station, what could be the threats and opportunities? Okay, let us go some threats. Again, same. Terrorism is there. Theft of nuclear. Okay, let me give you the list. Terrorism. Wherever I'm explaining, you can write the points. Terrorism, same like this. Okay. Theft of nuclear material. What if the nuclear material gets stolen by someone? So there's a theft of this. Risk of it. Theft of nuclear material. And it's very dangerous if nuclear materials gets stolen. We all know that, right? Environmental concerns about the nuclear industry. There's an environmental concern also. Then we have accidental release of radioactive material. What if the radioactive material accidentally gets released? Alternative energy sources. Okay, that is not the only way. There are alternative energy sources which can be a threat. Okay, like biotechnology is there, which might provide a very efficient way of creating fuel from sunlight. Biotechnology means you create fuel from sunlight, some source of light. So alternative energy sources. Then we have global warming due to radioactive and all power station and all. We have an issue. Okay, less fuel needed to heat homes and offices. Now let us go to the opportunities in the nuclear power station. What could be some opportunities? Like there are some uh, again, new technology could be an opportunity. Okay, new technology to deal safely. Okay, there might be some technology which will help you to deal safely with it, and also permanently with radioactive waste. Okay, then growing world demand for power. There's a growing world demand for the power. Okay, so for that also nuclear power could be a opportunity in that case. Growing world power, sorry, growing world demand for power. Then we have global warming. Again, global warming could be an opportunity. Why? Because more fuel needed to cool homes and offices. So you can use nuclear power station in that case, global warming. Then environmental concerns about greenhouse gas emission from fossil fuel use. So in that, nuclear power station could be an opportunity. Okay. And then political risk. Political risk could be an opportunity. How? Associated with reliance upon Middle Eastern and Russian supplies of fossil fuel. Okay, there are some political risk if you are relying on Middle East and Russian supplies for the fossil fuel. But if you have a nuclear power station, it's an opportunity. Okay, that you can deal with this risk. You can minimize this risk. So that's it And now let us summarize everything that we have discussed in this lecture. Let us summarize what we have discussed in this lecture. So first we started with external analysis. There are three models that we went through. PESTEL. What did PESTEL do? It is an uncontrollable environmental factor. See, external analysis, everything is uncontrollable in external, okay, outside the environment, external. And it provides implications for growth, how much that industry can grow. That's what PESTEL says. Then we moved on to Porter's five forces, which examines your market attractiveness, how attractive the market is. And also it focuses on influences on margin. What is the impact on the margin, your profit, alternative, basically at the end, right? And then we went through Porter's diamond, the four factors used when assessing overseas markets. When you have to assess overseas market, international market, you go for the Porter's diamond, which nation to go for, or which industry, which country to select. And it compares the current position to the rival in the new market. That's also it, what it does. So let us go through the PESTEL. What are the factor? Political factor, economical, social, technological, ecological, and legal. Porter's five forces: threat of new entrants, threat of substitute, bargaining power of supply, bargaining power of customer, and intensity of rivalry. Porter's diamond: factor, condition, demand condition, supporting industry, and firm structure, rivalry, right? And strategy. So make sure that you remember these things and you actually know how to apply all this also in the question given to you. Make sure after you finish this lecture, as soon as you finish this lecture, there is nothing more to it. You need to go through a past paper, okay, select a question and do a question on this where you are applying PESTEL, at least two questions where you're applying PESTEL, two questions where you're applying Porter's five forces, and two questions where you're applying Porter's diamond. This needs to be done before you move on to the next lecture, that is internal analysis. So till then, thanks for watching and see you in the next lecture where I'll be covering the internal analysis, like SWOT analysis, then the value chain, and more to it. So till then, thanks for watching and see you in the next lecture.